Hi y'all, you're watching the BigJimCountryBoy YouTube channel. Yeehaw!
A story so chilling it sends shivers down your spine. Big Jim Country Boy. A name as peculiar as the tale he unfolds. The unsettling part, he's vanished without a trace since, leaving behind only his haunting narrative. This isn't just a spooky story. No, this is a tale that sinks its claws into your psyche, refusing to let go. It's a narrative so bone-chilling that it stands alone, towering over others, casting a long, intimidating shadow. I'm gonna cut right to the chase. This is one of the scariest stories that I ever told Big Jim Country Boy I have not seen or heard of since gone missing. And I have no idea what became of him since. I thought that it deserved its own video. I hope you enjoy. I'm 20 years old and this is the first time I've thought about this incident in detail because of how traumatizing it was. I met my ex-girlfriend in California in 2018. She had lived her whole life there but decided to move to Salem a year ago. After we started dating, she had flown to Salem Ma on a business trip in 2019 and fell in love with everything about it, the small towns, the scenery, and the people she came to visit, and convinced me to pack up our whole lives and move there. And so we did. We saved up a bunch of money and rented a huge moving truck. The plan was for me to drive the moving truck across the country while she stayed behind 3 days to finish her classes at the local college, which were due to end at that time. I would have just waited until her classes were finished, but we decided to take advantage of an incredibly good job that we were offered from a company. Little did they know, they were about to pen their own tale, one that would send shivers down the spines of even the most hardened horror aficionados. Who provided the house to live in? She had a car that she had to drive there anyways. While I towed my car behind the moving truck, my dad came with me on the trip, helping me drive. And so, with high hopes and a heart full of dreams, our protagonist embarks on a journey across the country. A journey that would lead him to an unsettling encounter that would forever be etched into his memory. But that, dear listeners, is a story for another time. The open road beckons, a symbol of the new life that awaits. Our protagonist and his father, Big Jim Country Boy, embarked on a cross-country journey that was nothing short of a marathon. The moving truck, loaded with their lives packed in boxes, rumbled along the highways and byways of America. Each mile they covered was a step towards their new life in Salem, Massachusetts. The journey was grueling, to say the least. Days were spent navigating unfamiliar roads, nights were spent in roadside motels that offered little more than a bed. They were fueled by a mixture of fast food, roadside diner grub, and an unwavering resolve. Their spirits, however, remained undeterred. Anecdotes were shared, laughs were exchanged, and memories were created. This was not just a trip, it was an adventure. Dad and I arrived in Salem Ma about 3 days after we had left. We were exhausted after unloading the truck. After sleeping for about 6 hours, we decided to visit the small town of Lynn, which was about 5 miles away from my new house. We ate some food at a little family-owned joint and watched movie. They could not help but feel a sense of anticipation. This was it. A new chapter was about to begin. Their lives, as they knew it, were about to change. We made the drive back to the house. My new house was literally in the middle of nowhere. As we returned to my new home, nestled in the middle of nowhere, little did we know what awaited us. During the day, the view of the lake in my backyard was amazing. The woods surrounding my house were awesome. and everything was really beautiful at night till the bear attack. Dad went outside to take out the trash full of old food we had found in the fridge when we got there. I watched out the kitchen window. As he was dropping the trash bag in the can, a bear came out of the dark wood line and grabbed Dad by the back of his coat and drug him into the woods. Panic rose like a tidal wave, engulfing my senses. I rushed out the door into the woods, what seemed like 2 steps in my panic state, yelling to scare the bear off and calling to my dad, trying to listen and get a bearing on where I rushed to him, fumbling for my phone to turn on the flashlight in the phone. As I shined the light in the direction where the voice of Dad saying, "I'm okay, son," was coming from, there sat my dad, proving at his age he was still full of piss and vinegar, sitting on top of a dead bear covered in blood. Dad said, "I'm okay, the blood belongs to Smokey," referring to the bear. He still grasped the 6-inch lock blade he always carried. I helped him up, and in the house we went to get cleaned up. "The blood belongs to Smokey," he quipped, a hint of his characteristic humor cutting through the tension. The walk back to the house was a blur, our footsteps echoing in the silent night. The adrenaline began to fade, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion and the stark reality of what had just occurred. My father had faced down a bear and emerged victorious, a testament to his resilience and grit. In the face of danger, the old man had proven his mettle. The bear was just the beginning. It was a different story. The house was incredibly creepy. My dad had a flight booked back to home the following day, and we woke up very early in the morning to drive to the airport. I eventually made it back alone and wasn't able to make any phone calls or watch any cable TV because we had no service out there yet, and no cable or internet hooked up. My cell phone did not work anywhere on that property. The only thing I had was a box of DVDs. That was it, imagine, if you will, the isolation. I made it back. I decided to try out my new fishing pole that we had bought in town. I wasn't out at the lake very long as it started to get dark very fast in the fall. I went back to the house and sat in the living room in the chair, smoking a cigar, looking out the windows at the scenery. My view was getting darker and darker. I turned on all the lights in the house and quickly became creeped out when it became pitch black outside. Imagine being in the middle of the forest, in the middle of nowhere at night. And looking around, you could not see your own hand if you held it right in front of your face. And when I say it was pitch black, I mean you can't see anything. We hadn't hung up any curtains or blinds yet, and I had the extremely uneasy feeling after the bear that something was outside the house. Watching me go from room to room, I decided to hang up sheets over all the windows, using packing tape. I sat on the couch in the living room and put in a funny movie to try and shake the unnerving feeling that I had. It did not work. I eventually realized I had to try to get some sleep, and my eyelids were becoming very heavy. I was getting very tired. I covered myself with a coat Dad had left for me. On the couch and turned off the TV after a few minutes. My eyes had adjusted and I could see around the living room very slightly. My eyes were very heavy and I fell asleep. I woke up sometime later and it was still night and still very dark. I reached for my bottle of beer that I had on the floor in front of me and took a big gulp. I set it back down and looked around the room. Now I'm having difficulty putting these next emotions into words that I could accurately convey. My heart began to throb when I noticed a man standing in the corner of the room. I couldn't see his eyes, but he had to have been looking at me. I did nothing and said nothing, and not by choice, but because I couldn't. I was frozen. He didn't move, and it was clear that he was trying to not be seen after a few moments, I did my best to think rationally and logically. I'm not sure that he knew that I had seen him. I had a coat over me, which might have shrouded my face, in which he wouldn't be able to see my eyes. After about a minute of gut-wrenching fear, I somehow decided to do something. And it was the hardest thing that I've ever done. I forced myself to cough. I did it while getting up in an effort to give him the impression that I didn't know that he was there. I slowly made it to my feet and walked across the icy cold wood flooring to the bathroom around the corner of the living room. He didn't move. I made it into the bathroom and nothing happened. I closed the bathroom door and slowly turned the lock to the lock position. Tears went down my face as I backed up into the sink behind me. I was staring at the door. I suddenly realized there was a small window up above the sink that I could most likely fit through. I moved to the stuff off the sink silently as I could and reached up to the window lock. I unlocked it and tried sliding the window open. Window began to squeak when I pushed it open, and I froze, hoping that the man didn't hear it. A couple seconds later, I heard a tapping on the bathroom door. It wasn't a knock, but a tap. And it didn't sound like the tap of a finger. It sounded like metal, like he was tapping a knife against the door. At this point, I made the realization that the man either knew what I was doing or simply wanted me to know that he was outside the door. Adrenaline took over completely, and I slid the window open and pushed the screen out onto the ground. I tried not to make a sound as I jumped up and began squeezing my body through the small window. My head and upper body were out, and I could not see inside the bathroom anymore, only the dense dark woods in front of me. I was pulling my legs through the window when I suddenly felt the man grabbed my foot. Directly after that, before I could even react, I felt my ankle be sliced open. I let out a scream of shock and surprise as I pulled out of his grasp and fell to the ground. I started running away and felt as if my heart would explode. I stopped and looked around, but very quickly dashed into the woods and fell to the ground. Looking back at the house and the window to the bathroom, I felt my ankle, which was throbbing from pain, and brought my hand up to reveal it covered in blood. The deathly serious situation I was in became real and horrifying. I looked back at the house and suddenly saw the back door fly open. The man started walking down the steps and started looking around into the darkness, searching for me. I became still on the ground and tried to control my breathing. He had a huge knife in his hand, and he was wearing all black. He was walking into the woods, but not near where I was laying. He was grunting, and soon after I lost sight of him, I started frantically looking around, thinking that at any moment he would find me and stab me to death. I saw nothing but trees and darkness. There was a bit of snow on the ground by now, and I was freezing and shaking at this point uncontrollably. About 10 minutes later, I saw the man walk out of the trees from where he entered, and he went back inside the house. I got up and ran the best I could to my car. I managed to get in and leave without seeing the man. I drove straight to the clinic in town. The front desk called the sheriff, who came and took a report. As the other officers checked out the house and the woods around it, they didn't find anything but the bear. I left the clinic and called the girlfriend and filled her in and told her not to come to the house after all that happened, and that I was drive to my dad's place, and from there we will figure things out. I drove all day and the next night, only stopping for gas. The sun started to rise as I got to my dad's. I got to the door and it was locked. I looked around and saw Dad's car was there. I found the hiding key in the flower bed and let myself in. Dad was not home. Still upset and thinking the worst, I called around and called the airline. He got the flight home and got off the plane okay. Where could he be? So I just made myself at home. The next afternoon he still was not home. I called the state police. 3 officers came out and took a very lengthy report and contacted the police in Salem, Ma. No word from Dad. Days turned into weeks and weeks into years. Dad didn't get home yet. My girl left me and I saw even investigate for the disappearance of my dad. I long after the physical wounds had healed, a haunting echo of the past that refused to fade. I found himself changed. I sit here at Dad's house writing this, still waiting for him to come home, or at least that phone call from the police with answers. I know in my heart my dad will be back. After all, he slayed a 1,000-pound grizzly bear with a pocket knife. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, and if anyone knows what happened to Dad, Big Jim Country Boy, please leave me the info in the comments.